Russia has a long and complex history that spans over 1,000 years. Its history has been shaped by a number of factors, including its geography, its political institutions, and its interactions with other countries and cultures. This video will provide a more in-depth overview of the history of Russia from its earliest days to the present. The history of Russia coincides with the history of the East Slavs. The earliest known inhabitants of what is now Russia were the Finno-Ugric and Slavic tribes. Staraya Ladoga and Novgorod were the first major cities of the new union of immigrants. The Slavs, who lived along the Dnieper River, were the first to create a civilization in the region. They were eventually conquered by the Vikings, who established the state of Kievan Rus in the 9th century. The state adopted Christianity as the state religion and adopted the culture from the Byzantine Empire for the next millennium. Kievan Rus was a loose confederation of cities that were ruled by a council of princes. In the 13th century, Kievan Rus was invaded and conquered by the Mongols. The Mongol invasion was a major turning point in Russian history. It led to the fragmentation of the state and the rise of the Muscovite state, along with the resulting deaths of significant numbers of the population, and the numerous principalities being forced to accept the overlordship of the Mongols. The Mongols ruled over Russia for over 2 centuries, during which time they introduced the yoke system of taxation and forced labor. The yoke system helped to centralize power in Moscow, which would eventually become the capital of Russia. In the 14th century, Moscow began to emerge as a powerful city-state. It became a political and cultural magnet for the unification of Russia lands. It was ruled by a series of strong princes who consolidated power and expanded their territory. By the end of the 15th century, many of the principalities around Moscow had united with the Grand Duchy of Moscow. Moscow's strategic location on the Volga River and its proximity to the Golden Horde made it a key player in the region. In 1480, the Grand Duchy stopped paying tribute to the Mongols and took control of its own sovereignty. Ivan III, also known as Ivan the Great, consolidated power in Moscow and declared himself the Tsar of all Russia. In the late 16th century, Russia was plunged into a period of chaos known as the Time of Troubles. It was a time of political instability, economic crisis, and social unrest. The Time of Troubles resulted partly due to the death of Ivan IV, also known as Ivan the Terrible, who had ruled Russia for nearly 40 years. His death led to a succession crisis and led Russia into a period of chaos and civil war, leading to a series of weak and ineffective rulers. In the late 17th century, Peter the Great became the Tsar of Russia. He is often considered one of the most important figures in Russian history. Peter embarked on a series of reforms aimed at modernizing Russia and making it a major European power. He founded St. Petersburg as a new capital and introduced a number of Western-style institutions, such as a standing army, a navy, and a bureaucracy. In 1613, Russia emerged from the Time of Troubles with the coronation of Michael Romanov as the first Tsar of the Romanov dynasty. The Romanovs ruled Russia for over 300 years. They presided over a period of expansion and consolidation of power. Under the Romanovs, Russia became a major European power and expanded its territory into Siberia, the Caucasus, and Central Asia. Domestically, Russia faced numerous uprisings of the various ethnic groups under their control, including a revolt led by the Cossack leader Stenka Razin in 1670-1671. Peter's death without a direct male heir left a confused succession, resulting in a number of different relatives serving as emperor or empress for the next several decades. In 1762, Russia came under the control of a German princess, Catherine the Great. She continued the westernizing policies of Peter the Great and ushered in the era of the Russian Enlightenment. Russia got the status of one of the great powers of Europe after an invasion by the French Emperor Napoleon repulsed Catherine's grandson, Alexander I. In the following decades, attempts were made to open and liberalize the economy and political system, including the Stolypin reforms of 1906-1914, the Constitution of 1906, and the State Duma, 1906-1917. But the emperors refused to relinquish autocratic rule and resisted sharing his power. In 1917, the Russian Revolution triggered as a result of a combination of economic breakdown, mismanagement over Russia's involvement in World War I, and discontent with the autocratic system of government triggered a coalition of liberals and moderate socialists overthrew the Romanov dynasty and established the world's first communist state. The Soviet Union, as it came to be known, after the Treaty on the Creation of the USSR was signed, officially merging all four republics to form the Soviet Union as a country in 1922. The Soviet Union was ruled by the Communist Party and led by figures such as Lenin and Stalin. The history of Russia essentially became the history of Soviet Union between 1922 and 1991. The Soviet Union was a global superpower and played a significant role in world events until its collapse in 1991. By the mid-1980s, the weaknesses of Soviet economic and political structures became terrible. The Soviet government controlled all aspects of the economy and society, leading to shortages of necessary goods and services. However, the Soviet government also invested heavily in education and healthcare and made significant strides in scientific research. Eventually, the Communist Party weakened, ultimately leading to the dissolution of the Soviet Union, leaving Russia again on its own and marking the start of the history of post-Soviet Russia. The Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic changed its name to the Russian Federation and became the primary successor state to the Soviet Union. Scrapping the central planning and state ownership of property through nationalization of the Soviet era in the 1990s, new leaders, led by President Vladimir Putin, took political and economic power after 2000 and engaged in an assertive foreign policy. Coupled with economic growth, Russia has, since then, regained its significant global status as a world superpower. Russia's annexation of the Crimean Peninsula in 2014 led to economic sanctions imposed by the United States and the European Union. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 led to massive sanctions designed to weaken the modern sector of the economy. Under Putin's leadership, corruption in Russia is rated as the worst in Europe, with Russia's human rights situation increasingly criticized by international critics.